Blast off, Wolfpack. I've tried this 3, 4 times today. I don't know if it's going to work. Let me know if you can hear me, if my audio sounds okay. I'm going to let some people funnel in right now. And yeah, I'll just kind of hang out until I start seeing my top fans funnel in because I've been having some issues. Major issues not being able to get online. EDP, how's it going? How does my microphone sound, EDP? This is like my third or fourth time trying to get online today, and it's been a mess. A real S. Sounds good. Okay. Wow. Miracle. Good to see you in the chat, EDP. We're going to get into a lot of interesting stuff. This is definitely the episode nobody wants to drop. And it's been obvious today. I've been trying to, hey, missing time, how's it going? I've been trying to get on today and I've just not been allowed on. I tried pre-recording. It wouldn't, I couldn't live stream. I couldn't pre-record. All kinds of drama. Good to see you guys. So my name is Ryan, the anomalous ambassador of the airwaves, broadcasting just south of Area 51 at the base at La Madre Mountain. And let me tell you, this is going to delve into how disclosure is coming, but it will only be nuts and bolts disclosure, like a file out of the X-Files. They're not going to be talking about what we want to talk about. They will be talking, and I'm talking about our administration. They will be talking about incursions from unknown craft, such as the Tic Tac, and interesting, getting messages here on the side. I had a great meeting today with someone, and I'm going to delve into some of the information I got. I also have a number of documents coming to me April 18th that are going to delve into the stuff they're not going to disclose. And that's the bigger picture. So let's get into it. This is something that I'll tell you what, it's urgent. This is a red pill for sure. I'm seeking truth. And I'm going to outline some documented facts, some whistleblower context, and what they are not telling us. Before I do, I'll have to say that we've been catching tons of interesting stuff in the sky in the Uinta Basin of Utah, a place that is a proposed data center location down the 9 Mile corridor. 9 Mile Canyon is the section in the United States that has the most petroglyphs and pictographs, and they're thinking of putting a data center out there. So let's get to it. What the government's not telling you, what they don't want me to tell you. Hi, Kristen. Good to see you there. I'm glad you're thinking of us and we popped up. Let's get into it. We've got military incursions. We have Donald Trump saying that disclosure is coming. And it is. But then we have 13 people missing, plus a general, General Neil McCallison, a multiple star Air Force general who was in charge of Wright-Patterson Airfield, someone very near and dear to the types of things that disclosure might be disclosing. And a number of people he worked with. Monica Riza, we're going to get into all of this. Hey, Fearlessly Phoenixing is in the house. Good to see you here. And they're finally admitting that the craft are real. This much I will tell you is coming. They're going to admit that the craft are real, the UAPs. But only the metal ones. Let me explain. The government is rolling out a nuts and bolts disclosure program right now. They're going through protocol. They've even secured 2 different websites in the periphery of the disclosure, aliens.gov and alien.gov. And what they are going to tell us is that these UAP are metal. They're physical, nuts and bolts items. And This is nuts and bolts disclosure, delving into tic tacs, shadowing our aircraft carriers, over metallic orbs, over our missile silos, and military bases having incursions of drones. They will prove this with metallic objects, real crash retrieval items. How's it going, missing time? Luna wants 46 specific UFO videos to come out by the 14th. We're going to get into that. There's a reason they're demanding it. And they do. We all want the real truth, but they're not going to give us the real truth. They're going to give us the videos, maybe some, older the better, grainier the better. They will talk about nuts and bolts disclosure. They will talk about radar footage, pilot voiceovers, carrier deck alarms, recent UAP incursions over bases, Langley nuclear sites, etc. However, while admitting that the craft, the nuts and bolts craft that leaves something behind are real, they're going to avoid the bigger picture. The way it was expressed to me today is it is as if I'm sitting here in my office looking out and I see a man in black with the fedora, the jacket, the coat, everything, walking across my front yard doing a number of interesting things. However, in the midst of all that, he pulls out a pack of gum. He takes a piece of gum. He takes the wrapper, the aluminum foil of the gum, and throws it on the ground. And then he continues to do a number of outrageous things in my front yard and then walks down the street. Instead of talking about the entire event, what I focus on is the fact that I have tangible evidence, which is that little crumpled up piece of foil from the gum. And that's all I'm going to report on. I'm going to leave everything else that took place completely out of it. That's what we're going to be dealing with. Now, the government rolling out this nuts and bolts disclosure right now will be interesting, and it's going to throw a lot of people in for a loop. But it's also going to be utilized and weaponized from a media perspective. And we are going to explode on this particular podcast. We are going to delve into something they don't want us to talk about. And that's our blood, the real truth, our DNA, and our consciousness, which is definitely where they don't want us going. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason that Robert Bigelow went from studying UAPs and UFOs headlong deep into consciousness studies, out of the aerospace into the consciousness studies. There's a reason for it. We're going to delve into why. It's all about consciousness. So let's do it. The real truth is in our blood. It's in our DNA. It always has been since the beginning of time. And these UAP and these non-human intelligences have been communicating, contacting, and have been here since the beginning of time. That is the real truth. We're going to delve into it. I'm going to expose why the full disclosure will never happen and who's really pulling the strings. I'm going to talk about two scientists in particular who've been seen behind the curtain, and nobody's going to want to hear what I'm saying. Nobody's going to like it. As I said, this is the third, fourth, maybe even fifth time I've tried to get on today, and it's been a nightmare of technical issues. I don't know if that's just coincidence or the universe telling me something, but I'm going to delve into it. I'm going to tease the two scientists right now who've been behind the curtain. Dr. Kit Green, ex-CIA scientist and doctor, and Dr. Gary Nolan, a Stanford immunologist, also co-founder of SOL. SOL. So, the coming nuts and bolts disclosure. What are they allowing us to know? Not much. Now, here's the timeline of recent admissions. 2004, we have the Nimitz Tic Tac incident, Commander Fravor, radar data, FLIR footage. And then we have ongoing incursions, UAP swarming aircraft carriers, shadowing nuclear bases, drones, right? Remember the drones? Drones outperforming anything human. In fact, recently there was a drone incursion at a nuclear capable base, and they made no big deal about it. When in fact, I can tell you 100%, I know that those were not drones. Those weren't hobby drones. Those weren't any kind of drone you or I have ever seen. Those were, in fact, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP. The Pentagon UAP Task Force, AARO, has come out with reports, congressional hearings, Grush, of course, his testimony, and the mention of non human biologics and crash retrievals. Craft are at the key point of all this. And I've talked to scientists who are at top levels of a number of institutes. One particular scientist I exchange data with often, he's actually working allegedly on one of these craft, one that was acquired. Now, why now? Why is disclosure coming out? Well, a number of reasons. We have geopolitical pressure. China and Russia alleged to have reverse engineering claims of their own. Controlled leaks to acclimate the public without panic. This is a drip, drip, drip disclosure. No kind of garden hose here. And then we have what I find the most interesting is the limited hangout when it comes to UAP, UFOs, and SOL. The limited hangout is very interesting. You get a bunch of people with numbers behind their names, big numbers, lots of funding, big letters, lots of education, and controllability. You get people that leak what needs to be leaked, don't discuss what needs to be discussed, and take evidence of things they need to further their research. Let me explain. And this is near and dear to Space Wolf Research Base Camp and everything it stands for when it comes to neurotheology. We had over 100 brain scans get leaked off of the desk of Dr. Kit Green, the ex-CIA doctor. These were scans showing how people, astrophysicists, security personnel, and other scientists who were in close proximity of UAP or areas of high strangeness had adverse effects on their neurology, their brains. This is something they have labeled interference syndrome. Now, if you look this up, you won't find a whole lot about it. But if you have the right connections, you can find droves of information. The neurochemical, biological aspects of the neurology involved are huge. Parts of the brain are literally eaten away, killed, fried, crispy crittered, literally singed. Parts of the brain are singed as if with pinpoint laser accuracy. And those specific parts of the brain seem to be fried for a particular reason. Now, these are high functioning, high level astrophysicists, scientists, people working in exotic propulsion systems or working on reverse engineered craft. Even security personnel at some of the most mysterious of ranches have had this happen to them. And I would be lying if I didn't disclose that I've had a bit of neurological issues myself. Now, what's interesting is if you're an experiencer and you reach out to Gary Nolan and you tell him you had an experience, he doesn't care. But if you're an experiencer who knows somebody who knows Gary Nolan and they reach out for you and vouch for you, then the communication that takes place is much different. Gary, usually via email, will say, why don't you send me some of just a DNA swab? Send me some of your DNA. And when you ask why, he'll say, Well, this is for research purposes so that we can add it to a classified database of high functioning patients, pilots, intel officers, aerospace workers with unexplained injuries after UAP proximity, and it will further our research. It sounds good. You send the DNA, and then you find out you don't know what happened to the DNA. The real players, the government's go to scientists on biological effects. I'm talking about, there's more, but I'm talking in particular right now about Dr. Kit Green and Dr. Gary Nolan. Now, Dr. Christopher Kit Green, former CIA chief, this is no slouch, former CIA chief of life sciences and a forensic physician, is the guy who was in charge of these scans, these brain scans, these files that got leaked off of his desk. And just enough of a leak to cause, in certain circles that I'm familiar with, a huge uproar. This is causing people to wonder if maybe security personnel at certain mysterious ranches weren't handpicked to be part of the experiments themselves. These are security personnel, scientists. This goes into military bases. This goes in all kinds of locations. Now, what's odd about this is a lot of these devastating brain injuries seem like similarly close to Havana syndrome or something that could be caused by a direct energy weapon. However, there are some differences. The fried brain matter, the laser-like precision of areas that are literally crispy crittered, fried right, just cooked, as if to make space for a location to upload information. But there's more than just that. There's an immunology angle to all this, and that's why we have immunology experts involved. There is a viral consequence. In other words, there is something akin to an alien virus, if you want to call it that. I like that name. It sounds good. There's an infection. These are infected skies. There's something known as a hitchhiker effect. And there's the public stance and the private stance. Let's get to the classified database of former CIA chief of life sciences and forensic physician, Dr. Christopher Kit Green, where high functioning patients are analyzed, people in close proximity to UAP or high strangeness. And I'm going to delve into the chat really quick and then jam right back to the lab work. Okay, so we have Fearlessly saying also feels like stuff is so messed up. This is probably the best chance while no one notices. Amen. And they are going to use this chance. I wonder if there is a measurement process, if it's used to measure the viability of people who keep it or use. Yes, yes. And the neurological aspects are weird. How things show up in weird ways, 100%. And Mystical Wonderland, don't worry that you're late. We will get into this. We haven't gotten to the meat and potatoes of it. Okay, which is actually what I'm eating tonight. I'm excited because I've been on a fish diet for the week. Okay, so holy cow, leaked memos. Leaked memos are getting leaked. Paperwork is getting leaked. Brain scans are getting leaked. And many injuries look like directed energy weapon effects or advanced human tech, but the patterns don't match any known programs. In fact, some patients develop bizarre neurological changes. And let me explain. When you go through these neurological injuries, you shouldn't come out the other end smarter than you went in. But that's what's going on in many cases. And these patterns and the pattern recognition is key. Let me grab this declassified CIA document. A lot of people are saying, well, who cares? What's the patterns? Well, the patterns are that in many cases, these people become psionic or able to communicate with non-human intelligence or able to communicate with one another or having remote viewing capability that wasn't there before. other ESP, telekinesis, the list goes on and on. So while many of these injuries look like, oh, it could have just been a direct energy weapon, their lives change in layers. They are able to see things they couldn't see before. They are able to experience things they couldn't experience before. And they are able to have desired objectives they could not achieve before. They become psionic in nature, able to communicate with non-human intelligence, able to summon UFOs, able to do a number of things that they were not able to do before. Things that experiencers of UAP acknowledge. Now, historically, in ancient times, it's my belief that these non-human intelligences have always been here, and for whatever reason, have been interested in our DNA. And the reason they may be interested in our DNA is because of bloodlines. Now, bloodlines are important here because we are trying to weaponize, and when I say we, I'm talking about governments and plausibly denied private sector contractors. Okay, that are creating advanced human technologies that are based in part by, as I explained earlier, when experiencers send their DNA to people, they're asked, please send us your DNA. That DNA is sent. Then that DNA is used in a laboratory to synthesize advanced human technologies that can be used and weaponized potentially on the battlefield, specifically in the form, allegedly, of nasal mist sprays. And there's a number of these sprays out there, 2 to 5 different variants, and they're all different. One particular spray, allegedly, is able to be used, for example, by a special ops team going into a location where you don't want to have comms. You take some of this spray. I'll use a highlighter as a real life pretend spray, nasal spray. Everybody on the team takes a couple sprays of this that has been synthesized with experiencer DNA. And for the length or duration of the mission, they have heightened capabilities for psionics, ESP, being able to read each other's thoughts, understand each other, communicate without using their mouths. And basically, the team of 6 or so or 7 is able to work as one. They acquire somewhat of a universal consciousness for the moment, right? These sprays can be, they don't even need to be told that that's the reason they're using them. They could be told that it's for something else. They could be told that they're going into a battlefield scenario where there could be chemical warfare. Here, just take a spray of this before you go in. And when they go in, the whole team of 6 Navy SEALs or Special Ops or Delta Force or whoever theoretically it might be, that whole team becomes one moving killing machine. So that's pretty advanced human technology. Now, that's one variant of the nasal spray, allegedly. Like I said, there are allegedly 3 or 4 others. Some are more permanent in nature, and one in particular is 100% permanent. As an example, while one variant of the nasal spray might just last the duration of a mission, one might last 3 or 4 days, one might last a week. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, one has non-reversible characteristics. In other words, you are 100% ingesting the DNA of UAP experiencers. This is experiences that have gone through the genetic line of that particular person's family, possibly thousands of years. And that DNA infection, ingestion of that advanced, synthesized, laboratory created spray will make you basically an experiencer, someone who can communicate with non-human intelligence, someone who can theoretically summon UFOs, someone who can do all these things on a permanent basis. So you can see how important this is, this DNA that you send in. Now, sounds a lot like a virus, doesn't it? Sounds a lot like infection. Sounds a lot like the hitchhiker effect, which just being in these locations, people have talked about leaving and bringing some of this home with them, some of this high strangeness. Now, keep in mind, if this sounds like a virus, there's a reason. Dr. Gary Nolan is a Stanford professor of pathology, a top inventor, Soul Foundation co-founder. He analyzed MRIs showing fried white matter damage and unique hyperconnectivity. And this is the neurological basis for what interference syndrome can become. Hyperconnectivity in brain regions tied to intuition, pattern recognition, and the pattern recognition is huge. We'll get into the possibly paranormal abilities, what Dr. Kit Green called savants or higher functioning individuals. But let's concentrate on this patterning while I have this declassified CIA document in front of me, because what we're essentially talking about is magic. Patterning. This technique involves the use of consciousness to achieve, desired objectives in the physical, emotional, or intellectual sphere. It involves concentration of the desired objective while in a focus 12 state, and that's what's being delivered. An extension of an individual's perception of that objective into the whole expanded consciousness and its projection into the universe with the intention that the desired object is already a matter of established achievement which is destined to be realized within the time frame specified. This particular methodology is based on the belief that the thought patterns generated by our consciousness in a state of expanded awareness create holograms, which represent the situation we desire to bring about, and in so doing, establish the basis for actual realization of the goal. Once the thought generated hologram of the sought after objective is established in the universe, it becomes an aspect of reality, which interacts with the universal hologram to bring about the desired objectives, which might not, in other circumstances, ever occur. In other words, the technique of patterning recognizes the fact that since consciousness is the source of all reality, our thoughts have the power to influence the development of reality in time-space. So, there's been a number of interesting studies that have delved into this. One particular study was done with basketball players, where one group of basketball players went out before a game and they practiced their free throws the way they always have. The other group went into a quiet, dark room, and in their mind, through their mind's eye, they focused on seeing themselves making those free throws every time. The group that went into the darkened room, sensory deprived and focusing of that image, them being hitting those free throws in their own mind's eye, they astronomically did better than the group that actually shot the free throws. So let's delve into why these analyzed MRIs showing fried white matter damage and unique hyperconnectivity are so important. We're talking about the ability to transfer an alien infection that used to technically follow bloodlines. It still does on an organic level, but now we've seen our newest limited edition, the weaponization or the spreading of this alien virus into other people. And I just like the name alien virus, but it's really DNA and cellular anomalies in people who have had close encounters. So this has been confirmed on a number of different separate peer-reviewed science labs, white matter damage, unique hyperconnectivity in brain regions tied to intuition, pattern recognition, and it involves paranormal abilities. You become a savant. You become a higher functioning individual. So, examining the DNA and cellular anomalies in people who've had close encounters, what we see is that they show genetic markers or epigenetic changes not explained by normal human variation. Families with multi generational encounters suggest this is hereditary. There is a component of this that is hereditary. So when you send off your DNA, that is being synthesized allegedly into some of these weaponized advanced human technologies, specifically in alleged nasal spray form. Key factual stuff that we're going to get into here. Dr. Nolan has openly discussed how UAP exposure appears to tinker with human DNA and rewire perception. Exactly the kind of data that could be reverse engineered. Delving into the chat. All right, we got EDP. Let's see. Have a good one. Missing time. Yes. Have a great night. Missing time is taken off. Bummer. Okay, we'll be back to see missing time soon. I remember Nolan wanted Dan Bierce's blood sample, and he believed he was going to be tested for the substance. 100%. This is what they want. They want people that have been in locations of high strangeness, close proximity to UAP, and or those who have hereditary genetic markers and their family bloodlines have been followed by non-human intelligence for hundreds, if not longer, hundreds of years, if not longer. Fearlessly Phoenixing. I was including injections, medical records, going missing, and certificates of research with, oh, yep, with the signature, no traceable place, but burnt down. Yes, interesting. It was finding family history that was wild. Yeah, this follows. This follows family bloodlines. EDP says, Ryan, scroll up and see my comment about the demonic thing. So up I go. Let's get to it. Demonic. Yeah, now we're talking. Again, the whole demonic thing, nothing they should do could be good for us. Now, sometimes I feel like an episode of this pod will have me thinking, no doubt, these are demons and not fallen angels. This is actually really key point here. There's a reason why the Collins elite, aka the family, call these things demonic. What else follows family bloodlines for hundreds, if not thousands of years? Familiars, demonic entities that were known as familiars in ancient text. And if you look back throughout humankind, whatever technological level we are at, these entities will mimic. So, for example, if you go back thousands of years to the biblical times, where there's virtually like really no cell phones or any technologies, these things all appear as angels or demons or more organically close to what they actually are. As humanity progresses and we start to have technologies, these things will mimic what we have and appear to us in those forms and shapes. Ezekiel sees a wheel, right? By then, man had wheels and carts. And fast forward to the time of the airships. People are seeing things that look like airships in the skies doing these unbelievable feats. Fast forward to the time of planes. We're seeing planes, or fast forward to the time of now, we're seeing everything, right? Anything we can think of, we see. And this mimicry is of top secret importance. In fact, some of the most top secret programs deal with bidirectional mimicry. In other words, whatever you come to the table with is mimicked exponentially by these tricksters, these mimickers, these non-human intelligences, to the extent that it can fascinate and blow your mind. Kristen, I love your comment. Adam's family, witches, vampires, but those are names. Actions and deeds are very similar. 100%. So we whatever we put in the field will get mimicked, exponentially expanded upon, and displayed to us. This is a display that has a purpose. These are messages, much like MK Ultra. When you would see the MK Ultra films, this is how we came up with a lot of things, is through the occult, the symbology, and how these non-human intelligences interface with us. We MK Ultra, you'll see things flashing on a screen and you don't know it, but you're being programmed. The same is true, allegedly, of these craft, these UAP, these UFOs. There's a reason that this needs to be hidden from humanity. We will realize we are much more important than we think we are. We will be empowered much more than we think we are. Angels and demons allegedly throughout time have been fighting for our souls 24/7. This is a big deal. Our existence is a big deal. But through fluoride in the water, the dumbing down through garbage as food, very low level entertainment, music that is low vibrational, we are dumbed down to the point of just existence, when the reality is our time here is very valuable. It's epically valuable. So here is a pivot, little conspiracy pivot. They are mapping this DNA, this blood from UFO experiencers, to understand the biological impact, not publicly creating consumer products, but the data is being researched. These are products that are used only in the most secretive ways possible, allegedly. And when Nolan describes how only certain high functioning experiencers show the brain changes, Dr. Kit's role, Dr. Kit Green, his role funneling cases to him becomes evident. Public records show they analyze DNA and blood from UFO experiencers. And this is important because the data exists, there is a biological impact, and they're mapping, allegedly, the exact DNA signatures and brain upgrades that turn ordinary humans into something more. And the government has this data. So, why nasal spray? Why would nasal spray be the way to go? It's going to break through that blood-brain barrier quicker, immediately. And this is going to incur this consciousness-based phenomenon that typically follows bloodlines, DNA, and bionics. But now we have the real enigma. Where does the nuts and bolts come into this? What about the nuts and bolts craft we talked about? Well, the official story stops right there. Physical craft. Manifestation is a strange thing. If you manifest something enough, much like that declassified secret document I read, which is perfectly explained, this is magic. You're manifesting. You are patterning. You are creating something out of nothing. And if you do that well enough, it becomes something. It becomes an apport of sorts. So the official story stops at the physical craft, what they can prove, what they can find, those metallic objects. Done. Here's the proof, which is true. Here it is. Analyze it. There it is. We can't make this metal. Well, no kidding. We can with our minds or through this suppressed layer of consciousness-based phenomenon, or this telepathy, right? But there it is. There it is. Physical. The physical reality is what will be disclosed. Now, UAPs are often non-physical. They're often non-material. They're often holograms. They're often shape-shifting and telepathic. And they're often, almost always, a consciousness interface, which is the most important part of disclosure, which will not be disclosed. And I'm talking about the documentation that's been done by Bigelow with BICS, the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, because NHI does not interact randomly. No, it targets specific bloodlines, DNA profiles, multi-generational abduction scenarios, chosen families documented in abduction literature, and many of these scientists claim their own observations of familial patterns, including Nolan and Green and others. I'm not picking on those guys. They're just the public facing easiest ones to point out. But there is a bionics angle. Implants. We've heard about nasal implants. Now we have the alleged nasal spray. And it's not just implants, it's genetic tinkering. Hybrid programs. We just recently heard Matt Gaetz talking about being debriefed on hybridization programs, delving and going into the same stuff. The phenomena reprograms, okay, this is where it gets really wild. The phenomenon reprograms human biology at the DNA epigenetic level for enhanced perception, telepathy, or control. Control, control, like a hive mind control, like the stuff Tom DeLonge was talking about with General Neil McCaslin, like the stuff that is alleged in Secret Machines, great books, but hive mind control, many times intradimensional entities, non-human intelligences that can hive mind, much like that nasal spray used by a SEAL team in an alleged theorized battle scenario. They have a hive mind when they go into battle using a product such as this alleged product. And let's tie into the data. So we reprogram human biology at the DNA epigenetic level. Then those humans, their DNA is changed. In some cases, forever, depending on the variant of nasal spray, allegedly. It could be forever. They're automatically part of the club. You 100% are now added to the infected, and it's an interesting tie-in. So Green and Nolan have data. A number of other scientists have data. And all of this data and all of these brain studies are the smoking gun the public never sees. The same researchers who prove UAPs affect human consciousness are the ones the government consults. Yet all public disclosure stays on the metal objects in the sky arena. You with me? Okay. Weaponization is the agenda. There's no coincidence on why Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp call their podcast Weaponized. Weaponization is the agenda, in my opinion. Instead of exploring human consciousness and the evolution of it, ESP, unity, hive mind, spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, the intel community wants to weaponize the tech. They want to direct these energies. No pun intended. Directed energy effects, mind control interfaces, super soldier programs, and other things that are even darker than that I don't want to mention. Now, the nasal spray rumor derived from experiencer DNA biological material would be the ultimate black project. Spray on, psychic enhancement for operatives while the masses stay asleep. Broader cover up, maybe? I think so. I think full disclosure would shatter all materialism. Full disclosure could shatter some religions. Full disclosure could break down control systems. And let's face it, these are all control systems. In fact, I was told in a very important high-level meeting that there are two layers of control mechanisms at play. There is the control mechanisms of humanity that don't want certain things to get out. And there is a secondary layer of control mechanisms by the non-human intelligence themselves, which fascinated me. That blew my mind, possibly more than anything. So they'll admit the Tic Tacs are flying around. They'll admit the saucers are flying around, but never that the phenomenon is already inside our bloodlines. In fact, the closer we come to that belief, they will start shooting more and more stuff in the media. You'll see more documentaries on UAP. You'll see more documentaries on flying saucers. You'll see stuff to deflect you away from the phenomena inside of our veins, our bloodlines, our DNA, and that's important. So disclosure's coming, but not only the safe nuts and bolts version. If you dig deeper with people like myself, you'll realize that the consciousness, DNA, bloodline truth is dangerous. It's dangerous to the powers that be. It's dangerous to the human control mechanisms. They're not hiding aliens. They're hiding what the aliens did to us. They don't want us to wake up to the reality of genetic manipulation. Allegedly, and I've heard this from top people. One was in Office of Special Investigations. He said that we recently had Easter, that they were studying Jesus as a non-human intelligence because this was an awakening, right? Jesus was knocking down the control systems, the control mechanisms on every level, just knocking them down, making people realize the magic is within them, within their DNA, within their epigenetics, within their consciousness. That is the enhancement. That is the connection with the universal consciousness. That's the ultimate black project right there. There's a reason he was taken out. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, they didn't want everybody to be empowered. Things were going good for them. They were making a killing at the temple. You know, they were making money. It had turned into a flea market. This is, I think, one of the reasons this becomes spiritual very quickly. And we're in a very grim time right now. I know we're all looking at our clocks. We have horrible threats, you know, that are being put on other countries where we are threatening to decimate their entire existence off the face of the earth. And this will most likely be done with advanced technologies. Now, what's good to remember is these are human advanced technologies. In some cases, they may be reverse engineered. In fact, US satellite firm Planet Labs has announced a blackout on images, satellite images over Iran. Now, there's a reason for this. They've been threatened. They've been threatened to not release, at least at the moment, this is going to be a big deal. At the moment, they've been threatened to not release any images. In other words, there's a satellite blackout over Iran. They don't want anybody seeing what's going to happen, what's taken place, or what might take place. Maybe it's because they're going to deploy something. I've heard allegations and theories that they are preparing to use Project Thor, the alleged rods of God. This is a satellite technology. And it's insane. It's insane. What's odd about the rods of God is allegedly the tips of the rods of God have a tungsten alloy that may be a reverse engineered metamaterial, a tungsten alloy called Mondalloy, the same alloy that Monica Risa, the scientist who worked with General McCaslin, invented. So maybe there's some tie-ins here. Maybe it's all conspiracy. Don't, far be it from me to point fingers at our own government. At the end of the day, I'm praying for us and our government. This is where we live. This is where our families are. Those are our soldiers going over that could get hurt. But it's also a shame to decimate, other people. I went into my backyard this morning and it was gorgeous. There were hummingbirds and the birds were singing and butterflies, and it was just so peaceful and beautiful. And all I could think about is the devastation and catastrophic decimation that might be happening somewhere else. And I think we need to pray for those people. So, hard to not get emotional. The CIA possesses unique capabilities that only the president can deploy. Some of these capabilities fall under the covert action authorities. These are similar to fusion drones, some of them, similar capabilities, similar covert actions, like the covert fusion drones we allegedly may have deployed on MH370. Now, this covert action authority is only presidential, only the president can deploy these things. And some of these companies have so many tricks up their sleeve. I want to get into some of the stuff that's kind of going to be heard about. All right. And I could get in trouble for doing this, but I'm going to go for it. Some of these contractors, I'm not going to name names, but I have the receipts. I've talked to some of you in the chat privately about them. Somebody who's texting me right now, I just talked to, and they know that I know who the contractors are. Well, I guess I'll just say, I mean, what the heck? What the heck? I'll tell you one contractor, DynCorp. That's capital D-Y-N, capital C-O-R-P, International LLC. DynCorp has been brought into a whistleblower scenario. A scenario involving, it's a defense contractor, and it's a scenario involving human trafficking violations and the Federal False Claims Act, which is something you can all check into. Now, what's interesting about DynCorp International LLC is we're talking, when it comes to this alleged human trafficking and violations of the Federal False Claim Act, we're talking about the stuff that Michael Herrera alleged. Michael Herrera testified before Congress saying that him and his crew came in and they saw a human trafficking operation where these people were being escorted up into a UAP, what appeared to be a reverse engineered UAP. He had no other way to describe it. He saw people being ushered up into this UAP, and these covert special ops private contractors, similar to Spear, which we've delved into on other podcasts, black ops for hire mercenaries with all the best gear, literally shook them down, disarmed them, and said, you know, it's easy to get lost out here. What's keeping me from putting a bullet in your head right now? Type of threats. You didn't see anything here. Get out of here. Now, this is the type of stuff I'm talking about. And you can look this up in federal court, human trafficking lawsuit, alleging that defense contractor DynCorp International LLC was involved in alleged human trafficking and violations of the Federal False Claim Act. These things are happening, and we're talking about defense contractors. Spear, this has come out in the open. I'm not disclosing anything that's not already out in the open. I'm pointing you in the direction to do your own homework, come up with your own theories. But this is what, you know, Michael Herrera, this same scenario, this is what he was describing. So let's get back to the final message here. Non-human intelligence exists. Disclosure is coming, and I'm happy for that. All we are going to see, though, from my sources, is this nuts and bolts disclosure. And I get it. I get it. When I went, I get it. I get it. Now, there's an interview that Gary Nolan does with Vice back in 2021. I highly recommend you guys check it out. It's a public podcast. Nolan discuss brain scans and DNA. and he delves into OSAP related documentation and congressional hearings. Now, remember that the other side of OSAP was ATIP. And this is also very important to remember because ATIP was the threat identification program. OSAP was the weaponization program. And AAWSAP, what has been come to be known as OSAP, was the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program. This is where the secret $22 million the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, the 22 million that we know of, okay, this is what's been come out into the public that we know of, was given to Bass, Bigelow's company, to establish and study unidentified aerial phenomena and potential future aerospace threats. This was managed by Dr. Colm Kelleher. It created a massive database of over 200,000 cases and over 100 research papers. April 18th, I'm going to be getting the full intersection of the nuts and bolts documentation and the consciousness documentation. And I can get into more details then. But the key the details that we can delve into right now about OSAP is it was initiated by the Defense Intelligence Agency at the request of others. And not just any others, but Senator Harry Reid was one of them. I mean, here in Vegas, our airport's named after him. He's kind of a big deal around these parts. And this research was contracted to Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies. Now, the scope is very important because look at where Bigelow was then and look at where he is now. We're now in consciousness territory. We were then in another area. Now, fast forward, we're in consciousness life after death territory. We've shed the mortal coil and we're looking beyond the veil now. It's beyond traditional UAP sightings. We're examining weirdness, including paranormal events, psychic phenomena, and biological effects of UAP on humans, such as radiation burns, interference syndrome, neurological scenarios. The key findings of that included studying Skinwalker Ranch and incidents like the Tic Tac case. Reports have suggested that this has outperformed other. Now, it's probably been renamed now 10 times since Sunday. But what we need to remember is that people have come forward talking about exactly what we're saying and verifying these things. People like James Lukatsky. He was director of the program. He's a DIA scientist. He verified this. Former program officials have verified this and stated that the government has at times been in possession of materials from unknown origins. And that is what will be disclosed. That is the important disclosure. And that is why they're allowing us to know about the nuts and bolts. That's why I'm calling this episode X. It is the X-Files, the real X-Files. And what they're not going to tell us, and what we will delve deeper into, is the DNA helix morphing into ethereal light. That is the important thing here. What happens next? Delving into the chat. Let's see. We've got, okay. Interesting theory, very plausible. And the eternal kingdom. Amen. Fearlessly. Don't forget the judgment places upon the world. Yep. Children make sense in this type of technology, 100%. And DynCorp. Yep. Affiliated with General Dynamics. Okay. Well, you guys have done your homework. You guys know about the exquisite technologies. I think the important takeaway here is it's not about just nuts and bolts. It's not about the material. It's not about what's going on right here. It's about looking beyond the veil. But let's pray together, guys, that a number of families and a ton of people don't have to be forced over that veil, forced over the cliff, don't have to be destroyed this evening. Let's pray that doesn't happen. As we know, patterning works. This has been declassified. Prayer works. Let's hope that things turn out as positive as possible. But we will keep our eyes on the mystery. God bless you for listening. I hope you have a blessed night. Stay close to your families. Get a little extra water, some canned food. Make sure your fuel tanks are full. It's unlikely any backlash will come upon us, but do those little things just in case. Keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around. Take care.